Welcome back. You're watching RPI International, and we continue to talk about our top story here. For more, we are joined by John Laughland, who's Director of Studies at the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation. John, thank you so much for joining us here on RPI International. Well, let's now take a look at this historic occasion from different angles, so to speak, and specifically the Western reaction. Western powers have denounced the referendum and the reunification treaty as illegal. What's your thought? I mean, are they right? To what extent do you agree or disagree with their position?
I strongly disagree with it. I think their hypocrisy is absolutely breathtaking, and I think many Europeans also see through the hypocrisy. If you look at the comment threads in the newspapers, on the internet sites of newspapers on this issue, you will see that a very large number of Europeans understand that there are double standards at issue here. The reason why I say so strongly that I disagree is that the European Union yesterday, following the referendum held on Sunday, condemned the referendum as illegal. Now, when it did that, it showed its profoundly anti-democratic nature, because a referendum is, first of all, a very legitimate thing to have in a democratic system. And secondly, the Ukrainian constitution itself, Article 138, allows the Autonomous Republic of Crimea to hold local referendums. So the European Union really showed its face as an oligarchical and anti-democratic organization when it condemned the referendum rather than the secession. The secession, of course, technically speaking, is illegal. Whenever a state secedes from another state, there is a rupture in the legal structure of the state from which the territory is seceding. That's the very definition of a secession. So it's a bit of it's stating the obvious to say that the secession is illegal. Obviously it's illegal in terms of Ukrainian law, but that means that nearly every single secession in the history of the world has been illegal as well. The Declaration of Independence of 1776 by the American colonies against the British Empire was illegal in that sense.
Well, you know, John, I would like to bring up what President Putin said in his speech today, comparing the situation in Crimea with that of Kosovo. You know, and the Kosovo precedent set by the West. How fair is this comparison, in your opinion?
It's totally fair, and it's not just a matter of precedent, because there is a principle of law that a violation of law cannot be a precedent in law. It's a very important principle in Roman law, and many people, myself included, considered that the Kosovo declaration of 2008 was itself a violation of international law, because there had been a United Nations Security Council resolution proclaiming Kosovo to be an integral part of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. However, since the declaration of 2008, the international law situation has been clarified by a ruling of the International Court of Justice, which Mr. Putin quoted quite rightly. The International Court of Justice is the supreme arbiter in matters of international law, and their advisory opinion was sought by Serbia, and unfortunately for Serbia, the judges there found against Serbia and ruled that the Declaration of Independence had been legal, and also, more generally, that throughout history, declarations of independence are never in conflict with international law. And they went even further. They said that in the 20th century, declarations of independence have been regarded as compatible and indeed supported by international law in the name of the principle of self-determination. So it's not just the fact of the independence of Kosovo in 2008, it's more importantly, from a legal point of view, the International Court of Justice ruling of 2010, which, as I say, Mr. Putin rightly quoted.
Well, John, everyone in the West and Russia seem to be expecting this decision on the reunification, and yet the sanctions imposed were limited in scope. Now that it looks irreversible, will Western powers see any point in imposing further punishment on Russia? What would they stand to gain?
Well, they stand a lot to lose. They stand to lose a lot. I think that Russia is going to reply. We'll have to see whether the reply triggers further reply and how far each side is prepared to go. I mean, it's very difficult to predict the future. The situation in Ukraine itself is very fluid. and we don't know how things are going to evolve in the east or in Odessa. We don't know how the regime in Kiev is going to last. So it's very difficult to say what will happen. I think there are basically two scenarios. There could indeed be a severe degradation of East-West relations based on tit-for-tat sanctions, on increasing hostility, and indeed based on violence and instability in Ukraine itself. That's quite possible. There's also another possibility, and that is that the West, more or less, without admitting it, accepts the fait accompli. After all, as many people have said, the sanctions are purely symbolic. They're a joke, in fact. No one really takes them seriously. France, for example, has said it will continue to deliver its aircraft carriers to Russia, the second of which is due for delivery in 2015, and which bears the name of Sevastopol, the Crimean port. So far, the sanctions are very minor, and it is therefore, the second possible scenario, therefore, is that not much more will happen to Russia than happened to Turkey after it effectively annexed, not formally, but effectively annexed northern Cyprus in 1974. Let's not forget there are many other occasions where states have annexed or effectively annexed other territories for reasons similar to that is now operating in Crimea.
All right, John, very much appreciate your views here. John Laughland, Director of Studies at the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation. Thanks for talking to us here on RT International.